Welcome to Insight and Influence, a podcast presented by C&G Strategies, bringing you insightful conversations from influential people, including government officials, industry leaders, and advocates from across the state.
I'm Rob Vescio. Today I'm joined by Cara Ciminillo, the Executive Director of Try Together. Try Together supports high-quality care, education for young children, playing a key role in talking about the state of childcare today. Cara, welcome to the Insight and Influence podcast.
Thanks, Rob. It's great to be here.
So, childcare system in Pennsylvania. You've been working on this for a while now. Can you paint a picture so the listeners can hear, like, what is the current state of childcare system in Pennsylvania right now?
Yeah. So I would say it's a mix of strength and strain. So on the one hand, we have a lot of powerful pieces in place. We have programs like Keystone Stars that supports childcare programs to improve their quality. We have a good professional development infrastructure to help educators continue to grow as professionals. And obviously, our greatest asset being the childcare educators themselves. You know, they do heart-centered work that's emotionally laborious, and we have those amazing, by and large, women across the state. Pennsylvania has also been quite an innovator in some ways. We've got pre-K counts, and we have early learning resource centers, so parts of the infrastructure that really make sort of it happen. At the same time, though, the system is really strained in that you've got families that don't have access to childcare because they can't either afford it or they're waitlisted and they have limited options. That's especially true for folks that live in rural counties or folks with infant toddlers. We've got sort of a system of pluses, and then we have a system of where we're really struggling. So we've got the foundation, but we don't have the sustainability sort of piece figured out yet unless we invest in it. And so that's what we'll talk more, I'm sure, about.
Yeah, so I have 3 kids. Yeah. We went through the childcare system. When we first started and I had my first child, it was, we just went and picked something close, right?
Yeah.
You talk about the Keystone Star system, and can you kind of go a little bit more in depth on that as to what that means, what parents should be looking for?
Yeah. So, Keystone Stars, I like to say for parents, it's sort of like your cheat sheet. So it's your best way at doing that initial engagement with what to look for in a quality program. So obviously the most important variable is the adults in children's lives. So is the experience that a child is having in a program responsive? Is it thoughtful? Are they using kind words? Are they, as a child, they call it serve and return. As a child sort of serves something, is the adult returning something positive that's sort of growth supported? That's really the most important piece. Keystone Stars is that quality rating system that allows you to say sort of quickly, is this program committed to quality? Are they doing some of the things that they need to do to sort of improve their quality? So it's a star 1 to 4 program. Typically programs that are listed as star 3 and 4 are considered high quality. But I do want to say one thing to that point. It is most important that the parent use their gut. So when they go into a program and visit the program, what does it feel like to them? How does it feel in their gut? That's really, really important.
Yeah, we're so picky when we're shopping for cars and everything else. Right. It's like you pretty much should go in and actually look at the whole facility and see what they have to offer in services, right?
Yeah.
So, we're shifting, like, obviously childcare, it's all about the workforce and the economy, right? Mm-hmm. How this issue is really impacting, we just came out of a pandemic, and I know you guys as an industry kind of took a hit as like everybody else was, right? And so, I guess moving forward, like, we're also having like a bipartisan support for this issue in Harrisburg, and I think, what we're seeing up there, the chamber's helping, business is helping, a lot of stakeholders. How is the issue affecting Pennsylvania's workforce and economy? I guess it's like where we're headed right now. Where do you think things are, I guess, where we stand today, post-COVID, I guess?
Yeah. I think the big thing to point out is obviously the pandemic helped to sort of drive people's understanding that childcare is an economic issue, which was a big shift, right? Prior to COVID, I don't think people looked at it that way. The reality is Pennsylvania's economy doesn't work without childcare, period. People can't get to work. So we're seeing parents having to reduce hours, turn down promotions, leave the workforce altogether because they can't find or afford reliable childcare. which means then in part that businesses are struggling to retain talent, and entire industries are sort of feeling the ripple effect of that. I know that in 2023 there was a report that was put out where Pennsylvania loses annually $6.65 billion because of their employees not being able to find or afford childcare. So it is 100% an economic issue. But on the flip side, we are beginning to see, and I think especially in this region, we've seen a lot of media pointing this. Employers are starting to take notice and they're starting to lean into the conversation. Pittsburgh International Airport's being a great example of that, right? Christina sort of led an effort to make sure that she had on-site childcare, recognizing the impact it has for her employees. So the reality is,
you're working with some other county executives so far out here as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're doing some local things.
Yeah. So I think it's really about grabbing that corporate momentum that's starting to happen, and then sort of pairing it with a big, bold move that Pennsylvania can do across the state, because the reality is we need a big investment.
Yeah, so let's shift to so talk to us a little bit about the qualifications of a child care worker, and what they must have, what the challenges are in supporting this workforce.
Yeah. So, the qualifications for folks that are early educators are, typical, right? So it's having classroom management skills. It's having a deep understanding of child development. It's having child development credentials. Depending on your position in a care facility, you may need an associate's degree, you may need a bachelor's degree. So it is sort of the typical range of educator credentials and degrees, just like K-12 in that way. But here's the thing, our system yet doesn't support, in a sort of living, thriving wage, the way in which early educators need to be able to sustain themselves. So we haven't tackled that part of that sort of
especially
learning
coming
continuum.
Out of college and having that debt, right?
Yeah.
I understand. That's a challenge. It's kind of a disconnect we got to work on.
Exactly.
Let's see. Pandemic moved again. Childcare to the top of our mind. Trying Together has been having conversations with organizations about how they can address childcare for their own workforce, important to the employees. With so many people working on this issue, what bold moves do you want to see?
I love this question. I will say first, it's really great to see all the different sort of types of folks leaning into the conversation. So employers are leaning in, policymakers are leaning in, bipartisan on each side of the aisle. Community leaders are leading in because they realize it's not just a personal issue, it's an economic issue. And it's a workforce issue on both sides, right? So parents need care so they can work, and early educators need to be supported so they can stay in the field and meet that demand. So imagine, this is my big idea, imagine if Pennsylvania was sort of known to be the best place to be a caregiver. So as a state, we are committed to recognizing that caregiving is foundational to the way in which families, communities, and employers thrive, and then obviously the economy. So I think that would be a big game changer. We'd have to start by making sure that caregiving was seen as a profession and respected and invested in as it should be. So this,
versus a stepping stone to some education, K-12, job.
Right. So something that a family can thrive on. My parents are in this industry and they've had longevity in the profession and they've been able to raise their own family. But I also think it would take a public commitment, and I was thinking about this before the conversation. It would be great if Pennsylvania had something like a care compact where government, business, and community leaders came together and said, we're going to center the care in our economy, and we're really going to invest in it like the critical infrastructure that, say, bridges are to us here in Southwest PA.
Yeah.
So it needs that sort of commitment.
It's like a social infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Well, good. Again, future childcare, Pennsylvania, next 10 years and beyond. What do we think? As of right now, we need some changes in Harrisburg, but to make it strong and robust. What does childcare in Pennsylvania look like now, in 10 years? And I guess based on the initiatives, I'd rather, where do you want it to be, I guess, in 10 years? I would like to see, so in 10 years, what I don't want is I don't want to continue to get phone calls that say, I'm a family that's struggling to find childcare, or I'm a family that's struggling to pay for childcare.
Parents want to be able to provide for their families. They want to be able to go to work, and that means the infrastructure has to be there to support them. And I want to say that's also true for like where I want it to be in 10 years. I want that to be true whether you live in Erie, Philadelphia, Tioga County, the Laurel Highlands. It doesn't matter where you live. You have that ability to access childcare.
And that was one of the challenges of the pandemic. We lost some facilities, right?
Yeah.
During those, because especially in those areas.
Yeah. Access to it's been difficult.
Another child care advocate worked to expand the state's child and dependent care enhancement tax credit. A dad himself, he and his wife, users of the state child care system with Harper. Mm-hmm. Welcome, Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor Austin Davis, to the podcast.
Oh, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me. And this is an issue that's obviously really important to me as a new dad, but also something we've decided earlier this year that we were really going to lean into from a public policy perspective, because I think it's an issue that brings everybody together. It doesn't divide Democrats, Republicans. It's a universal issue that everybody agrees needs to be addressed here in Pennsylvania.
And not only are you a user of childcare now, so Harper is
18 months.
18 months, okay. So you've been in the infant toddler space. Mm-hmm. You're also the co-chair of the Early Learning Investment Commission.
Yes.
Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that work?
Yeah, so the Early Learning Investment Commission is a public-private partnership. We've brought together government leaders as well as corporate leaders across the state to create a better environment for early learning here in the Commonwealth. And I'm really excited of the things that some of the private sector folks have been doing, but we are also taking a deep look from a government perspective. How can we be more in tune to the needs of this community? And I'll give you one example of something that we're working on right now. Everybody struggled with office space in terms of as we've come out of the pandemic, and we have been struggling to figure out how do we repurpose some of the office space that we have in state government. And one of the areas we're looking at is around early learning to help fill the void for the public at large, but also for our employees. And we've really taken a whole of government approach and asked each department to engage and come back to us with a list of priorities that they can directly control in terms of early learning. And all the policy directors have been pretty excited, and so I'm expecting to get those results in the coming months and put them into action.
Very nice. Yeah, that's fantastic. Governor's proposal, Governor Shapiro, he came out with this proposal for childcare. First off, it's amazing that you guys are highlighting it this year. I mean, last year, it's amazing what we see in Harrisburg when it comes to issues that elevate. Last year, you guys took care of intellectual disability. Yeah. This year, it seems like childcare, it's their turn, I guess, in some ways. The pandemic definitely expedited that, I would think, right, and what you saw. But, for what Governor Shapiro's proposal, you guys are hitting the ground running on this. What can you tell us about the proposal?
Well, since we took office, every year there's been a component of child care in it, from expanding the tax-dependent care tax credit for families. This year, it's the retention bonus for recruitment and retention for workers, because we understand that this is an issue that every Pennsylvania working family has to deal with. And obviously, we're an older population, and we want to attract younger families to move to Pennsylvania, to raise their families here. And we recognize in order to do that, we're going to have to address the child care issue and make Pennsylvania a better place for working families. And I think we've had a tremendous amount of success in terms of bringing Democrats and Republicans together. This has been one of the areas where, as I've traveled the state, people want to have this conversation. People want to appear at events. They want to advocate. And so it's really exciting. My wife and I did a series of roundtables with businesses here in Pennsylvania. We went to Sheetz, was one of the businesses that we did a roundtable, who they created at their headquarters in Blair County a child care facility on site and is serving about 90 families in their company for childcare. Locally, here in Allegheny County, the Allegheny County Airport Authority has been a tremendous leader in terms of childcare space, and I would encourage anybody who hasn't visited their childcare facility that's available for their employees. I think that's an incredible way to recruit people to work there, and it's an example that businesses all across Pennsylvania should be following.
So you mentioned the child care recruitment and retention. Can you get a little bit more in depth on that proposal?
Yeah, so we're offering a $1,000 recruitment and retention bonus for child care workers. So if you are already in the system as a child care worker, we want to give you a bonus. And if you're thinking about it, we want to give you an incentive to go into child care. We recognize that it's not necessarily about spaces. The spaces are there, but we can't fill the spaces unless we have workers. And we have to send a message that these workers are valued, that we value the work that they do, that they're important and necessary to the functioning of our economy. When I meet with business leaders across Pennsylvania, one of the things that they always talk about is how do we get more of our employees back in the office? And my response to them is, well, what are you doing to help alleviate the child care issue for your employees? Because unless parents have a safe, nurturing environment where their kids can thrive and learn, they're not going to be good employees for you. And so we all have to have a hand in improving this situation. And I don't think government can do it alone. I don't think the private sector can do it alone. It's going to take all of us working together.
Yeah, I so appreciate that you lifted up the challenges that the early learning programs are facing. Obviously, it's a wage issue for them, getting them to sort of come into the field and then stay in the field.
Yeah.
It is a matter of concern. You also mentioned that employers are really sort of struggling, and I'm wondering, is there anything else that they're saying about what it is that they need to do to get their employees to come into work?
I think childcare is a huge issue because the pandemic was so long that people kind of got into different routines and different situations for their families. So making sure we're helping with that. I think the other thing that I've heard from employers across Pennsylvania is safety of their employees. We've seen a number of challenges coming out of the pandemic in downtowns and urban environments. That's an area that I've been leaning into as the chairman of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. We've spent more money in terms of law enforcement recruitment and retention grants to get more police officers on the street. We've also invested in after-school programs for the first time. I helped create the Boost Initiative. It's the first building opportunity through out-of-school time. It's the first in the state's invested in after-school programs here. So we've tried to take a comprehensive approach, but those are childcare, safety are probably the two biggest things that I've heard from employers. And I think we're heading in the right direction. If you look at violent crime, gun violence in Pennsylvania, it is all trending downward. And so we still have a long way to go, but now's the time to keep our foot on the gas because we're making real progress.
Well, you actually led into my next question because I asked Cara this question earlier. With so many people working on this issue, what bold moves that you're already talking about that you want to see, what does child care look like in 10 years? What do you want to see and how it...
Yeah, I think child care in 10 years, I think it's going to look very different than what it has traditionally. I mean, you think of daycares, but I think in 10 years you're going to see companies who are offering either on-site child care for their employees or partnering with a Brightside Academy to offer an incentive for families who work there to send their children. One of the things we've seen across the state is a lot of partnerships between child care providers and companies. When companies don't necessarily want to take on that burden in-house, they subsidize spots for their employees to utilize as a benefit for them. I also think we're going to see, we've invested a lot of resources in terms of education here in Pennsylvania. And I think there's been a lot of conversations about what does education look like and what does the future of our schools look like. I don't think they can necessarily just be 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. facilities anymore. I think they have to be community-based models that are open year-round, that are available and meeting the needs not just of children's,
like a non-traditional approach.
Yeah, but of families. Yeah. And I think right here there's a great example of it in my hometown of McKeesport. Dick's Sporting Goods has created a partnership with the McKeesport School District to create a community school. So they do obviously the traditional school stuff. They run after-school programs and before-school care programs. They run a nutrition program. They do job training and workforce development programs for parents. They've even provided a place where as simple as washing your clothes for families who may not have that opportunity. And I think it's been a terrific model. We have to recognize that if parents aren't doing well, children aren't going to do well. We have to kind of take care of the whole family in a sense. And I think there are a lot of leaders who are thinking about it from a much more holistic perspective. And I think this is another thing that came out of the pandemic that folks necessarily weren't thinking about before COVID.
So at Trying Together, people often ask us, what can they do to support child care policies? If people walk away with one action step from this conversation, what would you want it to be?
I think the action step, I would say, is to really raise their voices to their elected leaders and to engage with state legislators in their communities, because I do believe fundamentally this is a bipartisan issue. And I think the folks that are in need of childcare are sometimes the folks who least engage with their elected officials. When you think of Pennsylvania, I think of the lottery, and I think of seniors, right? Nobody will touch the lottery in Pennsylvania because seniors advocate, right? They show up. And sometimes young parents don't often have the ability to do that because they're working, they're juggling multiple jobs. But I think it's really important to engage with elected officials. And now it's easier now to do it more than ever. I mean, from social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, most elected officials are there, to sending a letter, to setting up a meeting in their office, to doing a tour of a child care facility with an elected official. I think all those are really tangible ways that people can move the needle and change minds.
Yeah, I so appreciate that you shared those examples. It's much simpler, I think, than people realize it is.
It is very,
it's picking up a phone.
Look, people don't realize, if you tweet me, 9 times out of 10, I am seeing that. Like, it's not some staffer on the other end, and that's true for like most elected officials.
More tweets after this.
Yeah. So I mean, it is very simple, and I think people don't understand. Like, elected officials really want to engage with their constituents, and sometimes you don't know where. You can't read people's minds, and I know they're all working hard to reach people. So I'd encourage folks to reach out to them.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Anything you want us to work on to help you guys move this proposal?
You know what? I think, just continue to advocate. I think here in Allegheny County, there are some really strong champions for child care, from Trying Together to elected leaders like Senator Lindsey Williams. I know Representative Lindsey Powell has been a huge advocate of this. And even on the local level, it seems like everybody is working in tandem to try to figure out how to address this issue. A good example, and I forgot to mention this earlier, Duolingo just opened Duo's Playhouse at the Kingsley Association in East Liberty. I was there for that. It's a drop-in place to help for families, to help stimulate your kids with learning activities. It's truly amazing. And so we're really seeing a lot of people step up. And so I'd encourage folks to reach out to their elected officials, talk to their employers, figure out how to get involved, whether it's organizations like Trying Together. There's a lot of good spaces to get involved.
Yeah, and then I'd just say, I think it comes down to what we value as a society,
100%.
Right? So we value the fact that children grow and learn and need and want to thrive. And so we've just got to really put our sort of political effort, our community effort behind that. So I'm excited. I mean, Pennsylvania's set up as a leader. For many years, we were so sort of advanced in the early learning space, and I think their proposal has a really unique opportunity to continue to drive us forward.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm going to, for the next few months, Governor and I have been out talking about this. We're going to keep talking about it. And, when June 1st hits, it seems like that's when things always get serious, even though we try to start them earlier. The negotiations at the budget table, and I think we're certainly going to fight for this. And I hope there's not a lot of pushback on the other side, but I haven't received much of that yet. And so I hope it's something that we can all stand together on and champion as Pennsylvania being a leader.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the time. Cara, also Lieutenant Governor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be with you. I look forward to coming back soon.
Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Insight and Influence. To learn more about CNG strategies and to access previous editions, visit our website at cgstrategiespa.com.